They called him unstoppable, unbeatable, a force of nature wrapped in chestnut hide. But greatness isn't given, it's earned, one race at a time, one rival at a time. Today, we're counting down the 15 horses who stepped onto the track with one mission: stop Secretariat. Some came close, one actually succeeded, and one of them pushed him to create the greatest performance in racing history. Stick with me until number 1, because the final rival on this list isn't what you think. And if you're a fan of racing history like we are, hit that subscribe button. We've got more deep dives coming your way. Let's get started.
Number 15, Linda's Chief. Before the legend became legend, there were questions. Could this blue-blooded son of bold ruler actually deliver? Or was he just another promising colt destined to disappoint? Linda's Chief represented those early doubts. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't bred to be remembered. But in the spring of 1972, when Secretariat was still learning what it meant to be a racehorse, Linda's Chief stood in the gate beside him and asked a simple question: "Are you ready?" Their meeting came at a time when every race was a test. Secretariat was still finding his rhythm, still learning to channel that massive engine underneath him. Trainers watched, owners held their breath, and skeptics waited for the stumble. Linda's Chief pushed early. He made Secretariat work. And while the result eventually went Secretariat's way, the race did something important. It revealed that raw talent needed refinement. You see, Linda's Chief wasn't there to become famous. He was there to force Secretariat to become better, to transform potential into performance. And that's exactly what happened. Before the Triple Crown, before the records, before the mythology hardened into permanence, Linda's Chief was the question mark that demanded an answer. Secretariat gave it, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't automatic, and that's why Linda's Chief matters. Because legends aren't born in single moments, they're forged across dozens of small battles that most people forget. Linda's Chief made sure Secretariat couldn't take anything for granted. Early tests are one thing, but as Secretariat's reputation grew, so did the quality of horses willing to face him. Our next rival brought something different to the track: genuine promise. Number 14, Twice a Prince. Twice a Prince wasn't an afterthought. He was a contender. A colt bred with purpose, trained with care, pointed toward the same spring dreams that Secretariat was chasing. Their paths crossed at a pivotal moment when Secretariat was transitioning from prospect to favorite, and Twice a Prince represented something important: legitimate competition. This wasn't a throwaway opponent or a sacrificial entry. Twice a Prince had credentials. He had speed. He had a team that believed in him. And when the gates opened, he ran like he belonged there. The early fractions were honest. Twice a Prince applied pressure without being reckless. He made Secretariat prove it, made him dig deeper than he had before. But here's what that race revealed. Talent alone wasn't going to be enough to separate Secretariat from the pack. The difference was command. Secretariat didn't just outrun Twice a Prince, he established dominance. He answered every challenge with authority. He sent a message that echoed through racing circles. "I'm not just here to compete, I'm here to win." Twice a Prince ran his heart out. He executed his race plan. He gave everything his team asked of him. And it wasn't enough. Not because he was inadequate, but because Secretariat was becoming something else entirely, something beyond the usual calculations of speed and stamina. Twice a Prince taught Secretariat that promise isn't the same as presence, that showing up isn't the same as showing out, and in the process, he helped forge the mindset that would carry Secretariat through the toughest battles ahead. Twice a Prince may not have stopped Secretariat, but he absolutely prepared him. Command over competitors is one thing, but what happens when you face a horse built purely for speed? a horse that forces you to make decisions before you're ready. Number 13. Annihilate 'em. Speed can be seductive, intoxicating, and dangerous. Annihilate 'em had it in abundance. His name wasn't subtle. His style wasn't either. He came to the track with one strategy: run as fast as possible for as long as possible and dare everyone else to keep up. And for many horses, that strategy was devastating. When Annihilate 'em broke from the gate, he exploded. He set fractions that made jockeys nervous and trainers grimace. He forced decisions early, decisions that usually led to horses burning out before the finish. Facing him meant confronting a fundamental question: do you chase the speed, or do you trust your race plan? Secretariat's team chose trust. Ron Turcotte, Secretariat's Hall of Fame jockey, had the discipline to let Annihilate 'em go, to watch him open a gap and not panic, to believe that raw, unsustainable speed would eventually collapse under its own weight. And that's exactly what happened. Annihilate 'em ran his race. He set blistering early fractions. He made the crowd gasp at his audacity. But Secretariat absorbed the pressure. He waited, he stalked, and when the moment came, he simply moved. What Annihilate 'em proved was that raw speed was only the beginning. That acceleration without stamina was a beautiful but doomed strategy. Secretariat possessed both, and facing Annihilate 'em taught him and his team to respect speed without fearing it. That lesson would become crucial in the biggest races ahead, races where early speed would try to steal the victory before the true race even began. Annihilate 'em was the warning. Secretariat was the answer. American racing was taking notice, but Secretariat's reputation was spreading beyond borders, and when international challengers started appearing, they brought something different: global credibility. Number 12. Kennedy Road. From beyond American borders came Kennedy Road, strong, respected, unafraid. Kennedy Road represented Canadian racing pride. He arrived with credentials earned on different tracks, under different conditions, against different competition, and his presence changed the narrative. Suddenly, this wasn't just about American horses chasing American glory. This was about a growing legend that transcended national boundaries. Kennedy Road's team had studied Secretariat. They'd watched the races, analyzed the patterns, noted the tendencies. They came prepared specifically because of who they were facing. That's when you know you're becoming more than just a good horse, when rivals start adjusting their entire strategy around you. The race itself was telling. Kennedy Road ran intelligently. His jockey positioned him carefully, avoiding the traps that had caught others. They picked their moment to challenge, applying pressure at a point where they thought Secretariat might be vulnerable. It was a smart, tactical race, and Secretariat still won. But the margin wasn't the story. The story was that international competitors were now measuring themselves against this American phenomenon, that Kennedy Road's connections believed they had a chance, and they weren't foolish to think so. Kennedy Road brought legitimacy from another racing jurisdiction. He proved that Secretariat's reputation wasn't just regional hype or biased American coverage. The horse was simply that good. And when Kennedy Road returned across the border without victory, he carried with him confirmation. Something special was happening on American racetracks, something that demanded respect from the entire racing world. Kennedy Road didn't stop Secretariat, but he validated him. International respect was building. Credibility was growing. But every legend needs a reminder that perfection is impossible. Enter the spoiler. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this deep dive into racing history, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're building a community of true racing fans, and your support helps us create more content like this. All right, back to the countdown. Number 11 is where things get really interesting.
Angle Light. Angle Light was the spoiler, the horse who proved that even giants can stumble. Every great champion has a loss that defines them differently than their victories, a defeat that adds depth to their story rather than diminishing it. For Secretariat, that horse was Angle Light. The Wood Memorial, spring of 1973, just weeks before the Kentucky Derby. Secretariat was the overwhelming favorite, the horse everyone expected to dominate on his way to Louisville. And then, he didn't. Angle Light ran the race of his life. He found speed when he needed it, courage when it mattered, and opportunity when it appeared. And he crossed the finish line first. The racing world gasped. Suddenly, questions resurfaced. Was Secretariat as unbeatable as everyone thought? Had the hype exceeded the reality? Were we witnessing the beginning of the end before the Triple Crown chase even began? Here's the remarkable thing about that loss. It didn't weaken Secretariat's story. It deepened it. Because true greatness isn't revealed in perfection. It's revealed in response. After the Wood Memorial, Secretariat's team made adjustments. They examined everything: training, health, strategy. They found a dental abscess that had been causing pain. They addressed it. And when Secretariat returned to the track for the Kentucky Derby weeks later, he didn't just win, he dominated. He set a track record that still stands today. Angle Light's victory became the pivot point, the moment that proved Secretariat wasn't a programmed machine incapable of failure. He was a living athlete who could lose, adjust, and come back stronger. That loss added vulnerability to the legend, and vulnerability makes greatness human, makes it relatable, makes it believable. Angle Light spoiled the perfect record, but in doing so, he gave Secretariat the opportunity to demonstrate something more powerful than perfection: resilience. Every legend needs a villain. Angle Light was that villain, and paradoxically, he made the hero's journey complete. Resilience is one quality. Intelligence is another. Our next rival forced Secretariat to prove he had both. Number 10. Key to the Mint. Key to the Mint was discipline and intelligence on 4 legs. This wasn't a horse that relied on raw speed or brute power. This was a tactician, a chess player in a game usually dominated by sprinters. Bred by the legendary Paul Mellon, trained by Hall of Famer Elliot Birch, Key to the Mint arrived with impeccable credentials and a racing style that confused opponents. He didn't blast from the gate. He didn't make early moves that burned energy. He positioned himself strategically, conserved stamina, and struck when others were vulnerable. Facing him, Secretariat had to show something new, that dominance wasn't just about power, it was about control. The race between them was a masterclass in race riding. Key to the Mint's jockey played the tactical game perfectly, positioning his horse for maximum efficiency. They tracked the leaders, avoided trouble, and set up for a sustained drive to the wire. It forced Ron Turcotte to think differently, to ride not just with power but with precision. What emerged was fascinating. Secretariat demonstrating that his greatness wasn't one-dimensional. He could adjust. He could respond to tactics with tactics. He could outthink opponents, not just outrun them. Key to the Mint pushed Secretariat into deeper tactical waters, and what everyone watching discovered was that Secretariat could swim there too. This wasn't a horse that relied solely on natural ability. This was an intelligent racehorse, capable of adapting to different challenges and different styles of competition. Key to the Mint represented the thinking man's approach to racing, and Secretariat proved he could beat you that way too. In a sport often reduced to pure speed, Key to the Mint demanded something more sophisticated, and Secretariat delivered it. Intelligence wins races, but so does heart, and our next rival had heart in abundance, even when the outcome seemed inevitable.
Number 9. My Gallant. My Gallant never backed down, even when the gap widened, even when the crowd leaned forward knowing the ending, even when every rational calculation said the battle was lost. He ran anyway. Some horses quit when they realize they can't win. They ease up, conserve energy, save something for another day. My Gallant wasn't built that way. His name was prophetic. He was gallant in the truest sense, brave in the face of certain defeat, dignified in his effort, unwilling to surrender even when surrender made sense. When he faced Secretariat, the outcomes were usually predetermined. The betting public knew it, the connections probably knew it, even the casual fans watching from the grandstand knew it. But My Gallant ran every race like the result was still in doubt. He applied pressure when he could. He maintained his position when others faded. He finished strong when others coasted home. And in doing so, he gave Secretariat something invaluable, a measuring stick. Because greatness isn't just about winning, it's about how you win. And having a rival who refuses to make it easy, who demands your best effort every single time, forces you to maintain standards. My Gallant was the opponent who wouldn't let Secretariat sleepwalk through races, who made him earn every victory, no matter how inevitable the outcome seemed. There's a photograph from one of their meetings, My Gallant straining in pursuit, Secretariat pulling away but still running hard, both horses giving everything they had. That image captures something essential about competition. It's not always about who crosses the line first. Sometimes it's about the dignity of the effort itself. My Gallant gave Secretariat honest competition. He showed up, ran his heart out, and held nothing back. That's not just being a rival, that's being a professional. Heart against inevitability, courage against odds. That was My Gallant's gift to Secretariat's legacy. Heart gets you far, but when distances stretch longer and challenges deepen, something else emerges: the need to prove you can finish what you start. Number 8. Prove Out. Prove Out tested distance, patience, and belief. His name was almost prophetic. Prove it. Prove you're as good as they say. Prove you can handle more than short bursts of brilliance. When Prove Out entered the picture, he brought questions about Secretariat's ability to maintain dominance over longer distances. Could the speed hold up? Could the massive engine sustain its power through a mile and a half or more? Prove Out forced Secretariat into deeper water. Their most memorable encounter came in the fall of 1973, after the Triple Crown triumphs. The glamour races were done, the spotlight had shifted, but racing continues and champions have to keep proving themselves. Prove Out made Secretariat work for it. He extended the distance, complicated the tactics, and demanded sustained excellence rather than explosive moments. And here's what emerged: not panic, but poise. Secretariat demonstrated something crucial. He wasn't just a brilliant sprinter who got lucky in classics. He was a complete racehorse, capable of adjusting to different distances, different track conditions, different tactical scenarios. Prove Out's challenge revealed the mark of a champion learning to finish, not just run. There's a difference between horses who can sprint and horses who can sustain, between athletes who peak early and athletes who know how to manage their resources across longer battles. Prove Out asked, "Can you go the distance when the distance stretches beyond your comfort zone?" And Secretariat answered, "Yes, I can. Watch me." That ability to prove himself repeatedly across different challenges and different circumstances separated Secretariat from one-dimensional speedsters. It confirmed he wasn't just fast, he was complete.
Prove Out didn't just test Secretariat, he validated him. He forced the champion to demonstrate range, depth, and staying power, and Secretariat passed every test. Some rivals come from other barns, other states, other countries. But the rival closest to home can sometimes be the most complicated. Number 7. Riva Ridge. The rival closest to home. A champion in the same barn. Riva Ridge carried expectations before Secretariat ever did. He won the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes in 1972. He was Meadow Stable's golden horse, the culmination of owner Penny Chenery's breeding program, the horse that justified years of investment and belief. And then along came Secretariat. Suddenly, there were two champions wearing the same silks, two horses competing not against each other in the traditional sense, but for attention, resources, and legacy. Riva Ridge was older, more proven, already a classic winner when Secretariat was still figuring out which end of the track was which. But as Secretariat matured, the dynamic shifted. Their relationship was complicated. In workouts, they pushed each other. In barn management, they required careful balancing of schedules and attention. In the public eye, comparisons became inevitable. Riva Ridge ran with grace and dignity. He never stopped being a champion. But he had to watch as the spotlight that had once belonged to him shifted to his stablemate. Beating him, or more accurately, surpassing him, wasn't just a victory for Secretariat. It was a passing of the torch. It happened gradually, in workout times, in race performances, in the way people started talking about Meadow Stable's prospects. Riva Ridge became the other champion, the previous generation, the footnote in a larger story. That must have been difficult to witness, for the horse's connections, certainly. For the horse himself, perhaps, in ways we can't fully understand. But Riva Ridge handled it with class. He continued racing at a high level. He continued representing Meadow Stable with distinction. He never stopped trying. And in that dignity, he gave Secretariat something powerful, proof that greatness can exist in sequence, not just in isolation. Riva Ridge was the champion who made room for an even greater champion, the predecessor who gracefully stepped aside while never truly stepping down. That's a different kind of rivalry, a different kind of respect. Same barn, different roles. But what happens when you face a horse built specifically to outlast you, a closer who refuses to fade? Number 6. Cougar II. Cougar II was endurance made flesh, a closer who refused to fade. While other horses relied on early speed or tactical positioning, Cougar II had a different weapon, the ability to finish strong when everyone else was exhausted. He was bred in Chile, carried South American racing bloodlines, and brought a style that confused horses accustomed to American racing patterns. Cougar II sat back. He waited. He watched horses burn energy in early battles, tracked them patiently through the middle stages, and then unleashed devastating closing kicks when they were most vulnerable. Facing him, Secretariat couldn't just rely on a strong start and cruise control. He had to maintain power throughout the entire race, knowing that any lapse in the final stages would be exploited. Cougar II pushed Secretariat into long, grinding finishes, where stamina spoke louder than speed. Their encounters became tests of completeness. Could Secretariat break free early enough to hold off a sustained late charge? Could he maintain form under pressure from behind? The answer was yes, but it was never easy. Cougar II made Secretariat prove he could win different ways, sprint clear and extend the lead, engage in a sustained drive to the wire, respond to challenges from different positions. He forced Secretariat to be versatile. And versatility is what separates good horses from great ones.
The ability to win when circumstances change, when the race unfolds differently than expected, when opponents attack from angles you didn't anticipate. Cougar II represented the danger that lurks in the final furlong, the threat that materializes when you think the race is won. And Secretariat answered every time. Not because it was easy, but because great champions find a way to answer every question, solve every puzzle, overcome every challenge. Cougar II asked the stamina question. Secretariat responded with power that lasted from gate to wire. Stamina is crucial, but as Secretariat's legend grew, he faced something else, the weight of being the standard against which all others were measured. Number 5. Foolish Pleasure. Foolish Pleasure arrived as the future, the next name, the next promise. By the time Foolish Pleasure hit the track, Secretariat had already conquered the Triple Crown. He was the established standard, the benchmark, the legend still actively racing, and Foolish Pleasure represented what comes after, the young challenger, talented and ambitious, ready to write his own story. There was symmetry to their meeting, the established champion versus the rising star, experience versus youth, proven greatness versus unlimited potential. Foolish Pleasure wasn't intimidated. He'd won the Kentucky Derby himself in 1975 after Secretariat retired. He carried legitimate credentials. He wasn't there to just participate, he was there to compete. But standing next to Secretariat, the contrast became clear. Promise versus permanence. Foolish Pleasure represented possibility, everything he could become given time and opportunity. Secretariat represented achievement, everything he had already become, measured in records and victories and moments of transcendent brilliance. The race itself was competitive. Foolish Pleasure ran well. He demonstrated why he was considered a serious threat to any horse in training. But Secretariat was operating on a different level. It wasn't just that he won. It was the authority with which he won. The sense that the outcome was never truly in doubt, even when the margins were close. Foolish Pleasure learned what all young challengers eventually learn. There's a difference between potential and actualization, between having the tools and knowing how to use them under maximum pressure. For Secretariat, Foolish Pleasure was a reminder that his dominance extended beyond his own generation, that he wasn't just beating his contemporaries, he was setting standards that future generations would struggle to match. That's when you transcend being a champion and become a legend, when your influence extends beyond your active racing days, when your name becomes the measuring stick for everyone who comes after. Foolish Pleasure went on to have a successful career, but standing next to Secretariat, he learned that promise, no matter how bright, still has to become something more. Promise is one thing, but what about sheer, overwhelming power? Our next rival operated in a different dimension entirely. Number 4, Forgo. Forgo was power, size, and brute dominance, a champion of another dimension. While Secretariat was conquering the 3-year-old division in Triple Crown races, Forgo was establishing himself as one of the greatest older horses in racing history. He was massive, over 17 hands tall, with a frame that dwarfed most competition. He carried weight assignments that would have crushed ordinary horses and still dominated handicap races. Forgo won Horse of the Year honors 3 consecutive times, 1974, 1975, 1976. He wasn't just good, he was era-defining in his own right. The question always lingered. What if they had met at their peaks? What if Secretariat had continued racing long enough to face Forgo when both were at maximum power? That question never got answered. Their racing careers overlapped, but their primes didn't quite align. Secretariat retired after his 3-year-old season. Forgo dominated as an older horse, but the comparison alone elevated Secretariat. Because legends aren't just measured by who they beat, they're measured by who they're spoken alongside. When racing historians discuss the greatest horses of the 1970s, 2 names consistently dominate the conversation: Secretariat and Forgo.
One revolutionized what we thought was possible in the classics. The other redefined dominance in handicap racing. Different paths, different challenges, and different types of excellence. But the fact that Forgo existed, that he was out there winning races in devastating fashion, carrying massive weight assignments, defeating quality competition year after year, that fact gave context to Secretariat's achievements. Forgo proved that greatness in racing could take different forms, that there wasn't just one way to be legendary. And in that plurality, Secretariat's specific brand of greatness stood out even more sharply. He wasn't just a great horse, he was that kind of great horse, the Triple Crown champion, the record breaker, the one who achieved mythical status through explosive, transcendent performances.
Forgo was the power comparison, the what-if that never happened but loomed large in imagination. And sometimes the rivals you don't race are as important as the ones you do, because they represent alternative versions of greatness that make your specific path more significant. We've talked about tactics, stamina, promise, and power, but now we enter rarefied air, the rivals who didn't just compete with Secretariat, they shaped his legacy in ways that still echo today, starting with the horse who did the unthinkable.
Number 3. Onion. Onion did what no one expected. He beat him. No excuses, no asterisks, no, well, actually explanations that soften the blow. Onion stepped onto the track, ran his race, and crossed the finish line first, period. It happened at the Whitney Stakes in August 1973, just 2 months after the Belmont Stakes and the completion of the Triple Crown. Secretariat was being pointed toward year-end championships. The Whitney was supposed to be a stepping stone, a tune-up, a formality. Onion had other ideas. Trained by Hall of Famer Alan Jerkins, known as the Giant Killer for his uncanny ability to upset champions, Onion arrived with a strategic race plan designed specifically to exploit any vulnerabilities. And on that day, in that race, everything aligned.
Onion set honest fractions. He forced Secretariat to chase rather than dictate pace. He maintained his position under pressure, and when it mattered most, he held off the champion's late charge. The racing world was stunned. How could this happen? How could the Triple Crown winner, the seemingly invincible phenomenon, lose to Onion? But here's the profound truth. In that loss, Secretariat gained something priceless: vulnerability, the thing that makes greatness human. The element that transforms statistics into stories. Because unbeaten champions are impressive, but champions who lose and still achieve legendary status, those are the ones we remember forever. That loss to Onion added a crucial dimension to Secretariat's narrative. It proved he wasn't a machine, he was a living athlete who could have off days, who could be vulnerable, who could be beaten when circumstances aligned against him. And that made everything else he achieved more remarkable. After Onion, Secretariat had to prove himself again. Had to demonstrate that the loss was an anomaly, not the beginning of a decline. And he did exactly that, winning his next races in dominant fashion. The loss gave him adversity to overcome, and overcoming adversity is what transforms good stories into great ones. Onion didn't end the legend, he enriched it. He gave Secretariat a defeat that needed to be avenged, a stumble that needed to be corrected, a moment of vulnerability that made the subsequent triumphs more powerful. In the grand narrative of Secretariat's career, Onion occupies a unique space, the giant killer who gave the giant his humanity back. Vulnerability makes legends human, but there's another type of rival, one who pushes a champion so hard that they both transcend the race itself. That brings us to number 2. Sham. Sham chased the impossible, fast enough to force history, brave enough to try. If Secretariat is remembered as one of the greatest racehorses who ever lived, Sham is remembered as his shadow, the brilliant champion trapped in an even greater champion's story. Born just days apart in the same breeding season, Sham and Secretariat were destined to be measured against each other from the beginning, and Sham was good. Not just competitive, legitimately excellent. In most years, Sham would have been the story, the champion, the Derby and Preakness winner, the horse everyone celebrated. But he had the misfortune of being born into the same crop as Secretariat. Their rivalry reached its crescendo in the 1973 Belmont Stakes. Sham had finished second to Secretariat in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, close enough to believe he could win, far enough behind to know how difficult it would be. But in the Belmont, Sham made one final heroic attempt to stop the inevitable. The race started and Sham attacked. He matched Secretariat stride for stride. He refused to yield. He ran alongside the champion through blistering fractions that would have destroyed lesser horses. Through the first half-mile, they were locked together, running faster than any horses in Belmont history, pushing each other into territory where thoroughbreds aren't supposed to be able to go. Sham gave everything he had, every ounce of speed, every measure of courage, every bit of heart in his massive chest, and it still wasn't enough. Secretariat pulled away in the backstretch and continued accelerating. He won by 31 lengths in a performance that remains the greatest single race performance in thoroughbred history. But Sham's contribution to that moment cannot be overstated. Without Sham pushing him through those insane early fractions, would Secretariat have achieved that historic time? Would he have been forced to dig that deep, to run that fast, to produce that transcendent performance? Sham ran a race worthy of immortality and was still left behind. After the Belmont, Sham was never the same. The effort had taken something from him. He ran a few more times but never recaptured his brilliance. Some horses are never quite whole after touching greatness. But here's what matters. Without Sham, the legend is incomplete. Secretariat needed Sham, needed his speed, his courage, his refusal to back down, needed a rival worthy of the moment, and Sham delivered. He lost the race, but won immortality. His name is forever linked with Secretariat's, forever part of the greatest performance in racing history. That's not failure. That's the ultimate contribution a rival can make, to push a champion so hard that they both transcend the sport itself. Sham chased the impossible, and in doing so, he helped create it. Number 1. The field. Because in the end, Secretariat's greatest rival was expectation itself, the weight of the leaf, the pressure of the moment, the burden of possibility. Every horse in the gate represented doubt. Every race was a test not just of speed, but of whether he could live up to what people imagined he could become. Think about it. Before he won the Triple Crown, he had to overcome the weight of being called the next great champion when he hadn't proven it yet. Before the Belmont Stakes, he carried the pressure of 25 years of Triple Crown futility. 25 years of champions who tried and failed, 25 years of horses who won 2 legs and couldn't complete the sweep. That's not just racing against other horses. That's racing against history,
against expectation, against the collective hope of an entire sport. And here's the remarkable thing: Secretariat thrived under that pressure. Most athletes crack when expectations grow too heavy. They succumb to anxiety, make mistakes, fall short of inflated predictions. Secretariat did the opposite. The bigger the moment, the better he performed. The higher the stakes, the more dominant he became. The Kentucky Derby? Track record. The Preakness? Controversial at first, then confirmed as another record. The Belmont? The greatest race ever run. Every time the pressure mounted, he answered. Every time the doubts crept in, he silenced them. Every time the bar was raised, he cleared it with room to spare. The field, every horse who ever faced him, represented the possibility that he might not be as good as everyone believed. And one by one, race by race, moment by moment, Secretariat erased that possibility. He didn't just win races, he obliterated doubt. He didn't just set records, he redefined what was possible. He didn't just beat his rivals, he transcended the sport. That's why the field is number one, because the greatest battle isn't against any single opponent. It's against the weight of expectation, the pressure of potential, the fear of falling short, and Secretariat never fell short. He became exactly what we hoped he would be, and then exceeded even those impossible hopes. 15 rivals tried to stop Secretariat. 15 challenges that shaped, tested, and ultimately defined his greatness. Some pushed him tactically. Some tested his stamina. Some gave him vulnerability. One became inseparable from his greatest moment. But all of them together proved the same thing. Secretariat wasn't just racing against other horses. He was racing against the limits of what we believed was possible. And he won that race too. So there you have it. 15 rivals who faced the impossible task of stopping Secretariat. Some came close. One actually succeeded. But all of them contributed to a legend that still resonates more than 50 years later. Because here's the truth about greatness. It's never achieved in isolation. It requires opposition, challenge, adversity. Secretariat needed every one of these rivals. The rivals didn't diminish the legend, they created it. And that's true in racing, in sports, and in life. We're defined not just by our victories, but by what we had to overcome to achieve them. Secretariat overcame 15 rivals, countless doubts, and the weight of impossible expectations, and became immortal in the process. If you enjoyed this deep dive into racing history, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of true racing fans who appreciate the stories behind the statistics. Drop a comment telling me which rival you think pushed Secretariat the hardest. Was it Sham? Onion? Someone else entirely? And if you want to explore more legendary racing rivalries, check out our playlist dedicated to the greatest matchups in thoroughbred history. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for keeping racing history alive. I'll see you in the next video.